It's a pleasure for me to introduce Janko. Janko is a very old friend of us, very old because we are old in this field. He is the head of beekeeping center at biotechnical faculty in Ljubljana, Slovenia. He himself is a beekeeper, a researcher, working now hardly for the Kolos program, and he is a member of the board of Slovenian Beekeeping Academy. We have a lot to learn about Janko, and I remember I have been several times in Slovenia since 1998, so we have quite a lot of time behind. Janko, please.
Okay, thank you. I will start sharing my presentation. It's easier to talk with presentation, of course. And I will do some general aspects, how bee biology is involved in all this story about apitherapy and also education for the kids. So all this together. And I will also go slowly from flowers to bee products. So that's also my idea to do it. So here we will go. That will be some stuff we will go more in detail, some we will just do some short review what it's about. So when we think about bees and bee products, we have to start somewhere, and of course we have to start at the plants. Previous last talk was a lot about the plants, and definitely plants are one of the major source for the bees. I would say food source and also material for the propolis, plant raisins. But we shouldn't forget that the bees are also collecting water. So these are all main things that our bees actually doing. So they have to really collect food, water, and plant raisins. And we go one by one and see what is important to know about that. So when we talk about foraging, in general, bees have to perceive stimulus from the nature. How they can perceive that? So one of the things is that of course they have to go first out of the hive, and during search flights to sense some signals. And we usually ethologists say it's our key signals for food searching, and in nature that could be some special smell which is coming from some direction. They can follow that, and they can also sometimes observe some contrast, colorful patches. So that's that we will check a little more in detail. And when they come there, they can really locate, they can check the quality. So they found from innate signals, shape of flower, smell, that there is a flower, and then they approach it and check it if there is a food, and if food is rewarding, so enough high sucrose concentration, they will collect it and learn that. So it's learning here involved when they recognize some valuable food resource. And when they found these valuable food resource, they can revisit it even during one forage trip, maybe going back. They can go from flower to flower, and they can learn maybe some tiny specifics, that one flower is smelling slightly different and is not so rewarding. And they can learn this, remember that smells should be more specific for a good flower. So it's not only color, which is just first thing, but when they approach it, they can detect with the antenna what kind of exactly smell is there present, and learn that smell along with the shape. Of course, sometimes also flowers are changing color and shape due to the different amount of secretion of the nectar, and also availability of pollen, for example. So it could be different kind of shapes and colors. And bees can learn these specifics. They also have to learn location where those flowers are, and usually they are doing in advance, so learning their path from a hive, and then they can return back to the home and repeat the trip. So if the food source is profitable, they would return to that source. If this very excitable for them, they would perform inside of the hive also waggle dance communication. Of course, they have to get interested bees, and if they are bringing some samples of the food, bees will touch them with the antenna, push into their bodies, antenna and whole heads, and then bees are responding with performing waggle dance. And during this waggle dance, they're sharing information about the location. And that's speciality of the Apis species. So not only mellifera, but all Apis species, that they can share information about the food location. And through that sharing of the food location, other bees which are still naive, have no experience, or maybe their general arousal for foraging drop down because their forage path is not so productive, they are following such dancer and then try to search them that outside of the hive, and they found that outside. So this social communication is really essential. Of course, this waggle dance behavior could be inspiration also for different kinds of activities, also with the kids. And yeah, I was even thinking how to perform some special games regarding this social communication of the honeybees. When are bees finding this food source, they're bringing into the hive, and there are different fate of these broad food resources when they arrive back to the hive. And we will do that one by one, more detail about nectar, and then we will go maybe more general with the other products, and I will point out some specifics. So nectar processing, we have 4 phases when that is brought into the hive. First step is forager bee is sharing that to the other nest hives, nest bees, and they can share additionally between them before actually drop of the nectar is put inside of the cell. Also, maybe here it's good idea to point out that it's important that in hive is also some space for deposition of the nectar, which is kind of limiting factor for a good honey crop in the hive. So if we want to have faster deposition of the nectar, there definitely has to be more space. So that's one of the things which we can learn from this transport from one bee to another to the cell. And during this process is going also part of the processing where are involved glands with the secretions of the enzymes and so on. And at the end, also evaporation and relocation. We will check that in detail. So this is this food exchange that I mentioned. So food exchange is crucial. So that's the forager is delivering that to the other hive bees. This picture, one bee delivering to the 3 other bees. Usually, that's very often when forager bee is coming into the hive that actually several bees are taking a drop of the nectar from her mouth. And then they are sharing that further with not such a rate of delivery. So, and here is important thing that glands which has secretions into the mouth cavity of the worker bee are producing enzymes and also some other substances which can be added to that shared nectar already during foraging, and then also all these hive bees. And because food exchange is very intensive inside of the colony, also some royal jelly from nurse bees is coming into the honey. So not a lot, but it's detectable. So here is just some images of electron microscopy of the food gland, of the hypopharyngeal gland. which we know is secreting several substances. Two most important enzymes, glucose oxidase, sometimes called invertase, which is splitting sucrose, and another one, glucose oxidase, which is producing from glucose, gluconic acid and peroxide. And we will come maybe back a little bit with the gluconic acid. And both are very crucial for antimicrobial properties, or better to say, for reducing the development of microbes in the cells. And of course, the same gland is also producing royal jelly proteins, but in younger bees, but in older bees, they are producing more this alpha glucosidase. But as well as young as older bees are producing glucose oxidase. Along that, there are also secretions from head and thoracical salivary gland, but they're more involved partially in pheromonal communication of the foraging bees, because they're secreting ethyl esters of fatty acids as a special pheromone from the foraging bees. And part of that can actually also find the pathway to the bee products. And also from the head is secretion of components for royal jelly, but that's more from the young bees, not for the foraging bees. So all this addition is then mixed during this relocation inside of the hive between the cells of the comb. It's interesting that bees are actually choosing the cell which has similar property of the maturated honey drop or first step nectar. So if there is less concentrated nectar, they will find a cell with similar concentration. When they relocate that to when it's higher, more concentrated sugars, evaporated water, more concentrated drop can be then transferred to the cell where is higher concentration of the sugars. And so it's interesting, it looks like also the same type of honey. So if they would collect two different types of nectar flow, they would put in similar cells one type of nectar, then another cells another type of nectar. So that's interesting that they try to put in very similar type of cells regarding of the content of the cell and crop. This maturation means evaporation of water, concentration, additional added compounds from the food from the glands. There are also antimicrobial peptides present along with those enzymes. All that is contributing then to that this honey is not possible to ferment, and when it's not possible to ferment, they cape it with the wax caps. It's interesting that Mellifera, that Carnica subspecies is leaving some air between that caping, but dark bee is there is no air between the caping and honey. That's the final process, and then as Stefan before said, that's the most valuable honey directly from the cell of the comb. So the next thing is pollen processing, and we call it final product bee bread. And here I will not go in much in details, but here what I would like to mention that forager bee has to deposit pollen load directly into the cell, and hive bees are then pressing that and adding their secretions. And what is very important, what was in last decade found out, that bees try to stop fermentation as soon as possible. Typically after 2 days, no activity of the microbes inside. Also some recent paper about yeast in the bee bread are showing the same thing. So activity of microbes is reduced, and in one paper Anderson said this is more likely that bees are conserving pollen and not fermenting. That is something which is quite new because all general literature is still talking about fermented product, a lot of fermented metabolites inside, but actually there is a lot of gluconic acid, mainly derived from processing made by the bees. Okay, at the end, when it's proper, no fermenting, they can put on the top honey and close it with the wax caps like the honey, and that can be stored for a longer time, but bees are typically preferring fresh pollen than older pollen in a hive. Another way to collect pollen, we know, is pollen traps in front of the hive to get pollen loads directly, and then we can dry that, and we have to be careful here because when bees are taking that into the hive, they start immediately processing it. But this one, we have to take care that there is no microbial development further and not to develop some dangerous things. Maybe a little bit about how the deposition of the propolis became. So bees are collecting plant raisins, bringing on the hind legs, like you see here on that bee, into the hive. And the other hive bees actually have to take away that because it's so sticky that bee alone cannot do that, to remove from the legs, from the corbicula on the last leg. So that has to be done by the hive bees, and then hive bees are manipulating with the mandibles and their secretions, because they have such secretions that they can detach the sticky resin from the mandibles. And during that process, they can really add some of the substances. I know that some researchers detect also heptanone inside, which is also part of pheromone secreted by the mandibular gland, and also some esters, which we know as also as a pheromone, like I've already mentioned, ethyl esters and also methyl esters, as well as ethyl esters of fatty acids. So this is very interesting. How is that happening? So the bees are actually adding their own substances, which are compatible with this very hydrophobic substance, and they can liquefy a little bit, we could say. And definitely heptanone is a good medium to liquefy because it's like similar to acetone. So it's also ketone like acetone, but with a little longer chain of aliphatic chain. So that is how then can be better manipulated and put on other places. But during that time, we sometimes add more or less wax, usually already deposited somewhere on the comb. So I hope that will help regarding the propolis. And now bee wax is one of the products which is practically a product of the glands of the honeybee. So the main component is actually secretions of the wax glands from the lower abdomen, so bottom side. And those wax scales are coming between the sternites, and bees are grabbing that with the legs and transferring to the mouth part and then chewing that to the comb structure. Along that process could come some materials which are around or on the body of the bee, and sometimes they can reuse a little bit of the old comb. So sometimes that's why the whole comb is not seen so whitish as this one. And even here you can see somewhere a little more yellowish parts. So that is because also a little bit of propolis can be attached maybe at the attachment of the comb. And all this is forming this nice hexagonal structure. I'm not go in this process in detail. But what is important to know, bees are also reusing cells, and during that they're cleaning them, polishing them. Still some this molting part from the larvae are still staying inside of the cells, and cells are darker and darker. It's a little intriguing if that is good or bad for the bee products. Sometimes they're saying bad and other times good. So this here we don't have very clear idea. In general, it's preferred that the best quality of honey is produced from fresh comb. Another problem with the old comb, not only this what is left by the bees, that actually can accumulate some extrinsic elements, and those the bad extrinsic elements could derive with use of pesticides in environment and use of biocides inside of the colonies beekeepers are doing. As we talked about bee products for apitherapy in organic type of beekeeping, this shouldn't happen. Another very valuable bee product is royal jelly, also mainly secreted by the bees, and typically this royal jelly, which is prepared for young queen larvae, is practically only from the gland secretions, but in worker bees, they later got also some mix of honey and pollen. But in case of food for the queen larvae, is only secretions of the glands. And these secretions are most important are two glands, this hypopharyngeal gland already mentioned, producing royal jelly proteins. And at that time, typically a lot of glucose oxidase as well. On the other hand, they have a mandibular gland, which is contributing fatty acids components, especially 10-hydroxydecanoic acid, which is known as one of the key quality factor for royal jelly. So these are main components. There is also sugar, glucose mainly also secreted through the glands. And that is also kind of important part of the royal jelly. And beekeepers actually abusing, I could say, worker bees that are trying to rear queens with the artificial rearing of the queens. And that's the first step, is practically the same as rearing the queens, and that we stopped feeding those larvae to become old larvae after 72 hours and collecting royal jelly, for example. That's the technique, and we know this biology of the development, and we are using that for production of royal jelly. And the last product are also secreted practically from the bee venom, from the glands. That's a bee venom from the venom glands that are accessories to the sting apparatus. Okay, I think, yeah, I have just a few minutes. And we are using that, actually making special apparatus to excite extra bees to sting and to collect venom, or that can be used that we excite bee, which is directly used for application. So we know that that we can make bees to be stinging, but that's for long-term survival of the colony. Of course, we have to be careful how often we are doing that, because it's also not very good for the colony. The last thing that I would like to mention, some different views, is about use of larvae for human consumption. We already heard about Lapilarnil, which was invented in Romania. But maybe there is some contradiction regarding the content, what everything is inside of this material. Definitely some preclinical studies shows on the animals, it's really contributing with the sexual organs and so on, and sexual motivation and so on. But maybe the substances are not very clear which are involved. Something about studying of bee larvae, drone larvae, is written by Hassan in a recent bee book publication. And it is interesting PhD study by Hungarian Ceres, who also published some more detailed papers. And what is very interesting, that actually drone larvae contains a lot of methyl esters of fatty acids, which is known as brood pheromone and much higher concentration. And he tried with them on the rats and got similar results as with the larvae. So maybe that's a good starting point to clarify what is going on with this product. And high volatiles is something new in apitherapy. And here are volatiles from inside of the hive that derives from the bee products, and also volatiles which are derived directly from the bee, and these are mainly pheromonal compounds. Some are related with advertising of the nest. Some are also related with the brood, like there is also volatile brood pheromone, beta-oxemen, which could take part of that bouquet. And of course, there is also like heptanone could be part of that because bees are also cleaning some stuff and using that substance as a defense material, not only as a pheromone. Okay, I think, yeah, when we know all these details, we can adapt our beekeeping facility. And here showing one front side of the bee house of our beekeeper, which invested a lot in apitourism as well, in apitherapy, also with this hive air and so on. I think, yeah, of course, maybe at the end, later, we'll talk about also more about materials. We already heard about material use. That could be a separate discussion by Stengazzi already. And yeah, here we have a lot of things to think about. But this basic biology is a good orientation, what we have to do. Okay, I think I have to stop here. And thank you for attention. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Badiaa Lyoussi from, I'm not sure if I pronounce everything correct, but from Morocco. I did some search. It's amazing how many different kinds of papers can be found from her, from the Laboratory of Natural Substances. So in the past, a lot of different research about the plants, and now more and more bee products, and recent times, I think also a lot of quite some papers about propolis and so on. So very wide view in that pharmacological aspect of natural products, including bee products. And I'm very pleased to have you here and to share with us your knowledge about medical bee plants in traditional medicine for children. Please, Badiaa, it's your stage.
Thank you. So I will share my Bakour présentation. Très bien. Thank you. It's my great pleasure to take part in this conference. I had been in Slovenia. It's a very nice country, and we have a very good management for beekeeping and also for apitherapy. Do you hear me, please? Okay.
Fine.
Okay. So I will give a survey of medicinal bee plants used in traditional medicine for children diseases in our city, in our region of Sefrou, in mountain of Atlas. So we have melliferous plants or plant species from which the bee takes substances, in particular nectar, pollen, and resin to nourish themselves and to develop their various productions. It is well known that bee products reflect in quantity and quality the nature of the foraged plants. The study of honey plants that appears to be of great interest. Knowledge of honey plants provides the basis of the objective assessment of the quantitative and qualitative productivity of bees in different regions. At the global level, work related to the knowledge of honey plants is recent and very limited in number. So Sefrou city, it's mentioned by cherries in this province. It's my province from Min Atlas. And we have festival of cherries each year. It started since more than 200 years. And each year we make a quality production of cherries and also festivity for this fruit. So you have make a survey from apicultures from our region in order to make a recensement of melliferous medicinal plants in this province. And this survey only for beekeepers. We take information about beekeepers, information about melliferous plants, and about apiaries. And when you look in our province, we don't have female gender. We have only male, 100% are beekeepers. But in a rural area, we start to make some sensibilization for ladies to be beekeepers. But in apitherapy, ladies are very presented in cooperatives. So in experience duration, we have less than 10 years, only 30%. Between 10 and 12 years, we have experience 60%, and higher than 20 years, we have only 3%. For school level, we have unschools 20%, primary school 40%, middle school 30%, secondary 12%, and university 23%. Because we make in our university a professional license for apitherapy, apiculture, and sustainable development. So it had been a good courses for our students, and they are now in cooperative and in apiculture. It's very, very good practice, research for development. And with the age range, we have between 20 and 40 years, more than 40%, and higher than 60 years, we have more than 30%. Number of beehives managed by beekeepers in Sefrou city, 40% less than 20 years, but more than 100 years, we have 20% apicultures. Type of melliferous plants found in Sefrou city, like my colleague said before, it is very important to make this recensement. We have from resin 30%, pollen 70%, nectar 30%, honeydew 6%. So we have 73% of melliferous plants from resin, pollen, nectar, and honeydew. And for trees, we have 26%, shrubs 25%, herbaceous plants 43%, and bulbs 2%. Type of melliferous plants found in Sefrou city, we have nectariferous plant, and we have polliniferous plant, resivinous plant 30%, and honeydew plant 4%. When you look at this melliferous plant in Sefrou city, we have Seratonica silica, Acacia, Ficus carica, Morus alba, Punica granatum, Prunus, and also Citrus aurantium. All these are melliferous plants, but with therapeutic effect. I will give you some examples of this plant because we have made all active compounds, like for Punica granatum for cardiovascular pathologies. We have Ficus carica for anemia, for malnutrition in children. It gives a very good use for traditional use of these melliferous plants. We have also Juniperus traclinis, Eucalyptus globulus, and also Eucalyptus radiata, which are good by inhalation in children with COVID pandemic. It gives a very good impact of this plant, especially for Eucalyptus radiata. We have Thymus vulgaris, Retama, Juniperus oxycedrus, and we have some aromatic with essential oils, and we mix these essential oils from this melliferous plant with propolis, with royal jelly, in order to have synergistic effect and to avoid secondary undesirable effects. We have also Artemisia herba alba, Myrtus communis, Inula viscosa, which is good for ulcer and for digestive pathologies, Oreganum vulgar, and Ajuga eva. All these plants we have publication with impact factors with this panoply of plants. We have also Quercus ciber and Quercus ilex and Crataegus monogyna, which is good for cardiovascular pathology as cardiotonic. And we make some essential oils with some aromatic plants. We have also Biplerum spinosum in my conference with pharmacology of plant. I will speak about this. It's a very good honey from our area, and we make a very good research for cancer, anti-inflammatory diseases, for diabetes, for antibacterial, in order to promote these products as local products with an expensive price. It's very good. It is like Manuka honey, and more. We have Peganum harmala also to treat cancer, and we have a very good thesis in our laboratory with Peganum harmala, with biomolecules from Peganum harmala, which give a very good effect on cancer in human also in our region. We have Prunus cerasus, because we have in Sefrou city, it is the first city which produces a very grand amount of Prunus cerasus. Importance of melliferous plants for bees, we have foraging flowers, nectar harvest, transformation into honey, and we have foraging flowers, collecting pollen from flowers, transformation into bee pollen, and after in bee bread formation. For propolis, we have resin formation for the formation of propolis. And we have grid in order to collect this resin and to collect propolis. And we have propolis in the hive, which is an anti-inflammatory and antibacterial, antibiotic impacts. So from our results, we have made a survey to see which melliferous plants found in Sefrou city used for children disease. And it is very interesting because we found citrus, Ficus carica, Lavandula officinalis, Matricacia camomilla, Manta piperita, Anetum gravium, Citrus lemon, and Carum carvi. And all these plants we have making some maceration and essential oils from aromatic plants in order to see the DL50, because you should make the toxicity, the acute and chronic toxicity, because the dose, the plant, it is not a poison, but the dose, it's the poison. You should give a very small doses in order to don't have a toxic impact. So when we look at this plant citrus from Rutaceae family in children, we treat diarrhea, effective on cause, Matricacima camomilla for fever, Manta piperita also for fever, and Ficus carica also for fever, Pimpinilla anisum for gastric colic, Anetum gravium for antispasm, Lavandula officinalis colic in newborn and fever, Carum carvi, it's very interesting, Carum carvi, because it treats also carminative effects in a newborn, but also he treats gastrointestinal pathologies and antispasmodic, and you could give in children by infusion 1 hour and 1.5 gram. It's for a teaspoon, it's corresponding to 3.5 gram, and we could mix it with anise and with Feniculum vulgar. Also, we could make essential oils by external use. It is very good because we have many publications with also Carum carvi, Thymus vulgaris also effective on cold. So I give you an example for Ficus carica, because we have the bud of Ficus carica. It's called gemotherapy, because we have aromatherapy, it's with essential oils, and phytotherapy with medicinal plants, but gemotherapy, it is with bud of some plants. So for Ficus carica, as I mentioned before, it is good for anemia in children, and also it is good for malnutrition. like Erasmus and Kwashiorkor, because it's very rich in selenium, it's very rich in oligo-element vitamins, and it treats insomnia in children, and you could mix it with honey. Also for gastric drainer, regulates gastric secretion. So the chemotherapy used from this bud of Ficus carica gives a very good result with mixture with bee products. So we have chemotherapy, aromatherapy, and apitherapy. When you look at this Ficus carica, we have some compounds like ferulic acid, like chlorogenic acid, rutin. So you have flavonoids and phenolic acid. So it is very important because for us, we make research with the extraction of polyphenols from plants. And we make characterization of biomolecules in order to make a correlation between antioxidants and between antibacterial and pharmacological effects of this plant. So for children, it's good for fever. Also, we have citrus sinensis, citrus to treat diarrhea, and it's rich in caffeic acid, cinnamic acid, naringine, ferulic acid. So we have this compound, and we should make the quality and quantity of these biomolecules in order to make this correlation and to make pathologies in animals in order to have which dose is available for children and also for adults. We have citrus sinensis from our region. It's photo from Ramon. It's our collaborator from Flemish community from Belgium. He had make some courses for my students in professional license, and we make some randonnée and some excursion in order to collect melliferous plant and to make photo for this plant. So Lavandula officinalis also, it's good because we have essential oils of Lavandula officinalis, which it's good for circulatory problems, for insomnia, and also for nervosity in children and also in adults. We could make one for 20 80 milligram in small doses in external and internal use. We have apigenin, we have luteolin also. For Matricaria chamomile, it's very good. Also, we could make 3 grams by infusion in 150 milliliters of water. It is antispasmodic, and by external use, it is antiseptic and anti-inflammatory. So all these are very interesting to make this correlation between, and we have syringic acid, caffeic acid, ferulic acid, and we have also essential oils, chemotypic essential oils, because we have the impact of edaphic and climatic change, which gives some volatile compounds, which are very dominant for curative and preventive effects. Thymus vulgaris. We have ferulic acid, pyrogalol, ascorbic acid, caffeic acid, catechol, alpha-tocopherol, quercetin. All these cocktail of biomolecules are very important to explain the effect of impact on pathologies. We have antibacterian to treat cockroach and also anti-inflammatory, and you could give 1 or 2 grams by infusion and also by cataplasm. Thymus vulgaris, you could make it by in herbal medicine as an expectorant to help relieve the syndrome of bronchitis and also upper respiratory tract, traditionally used for spasmolytic effect and also for carminative and also colic impacts. Also as topical, used as antiseptic, as antimicrobial, and in our region we have many chemotype of thymus, and we have essential oils, and we make some analysis for inflammation. And I give you for pharmacology of the products an example of arrow honey when we mix honey with essential oils, and it gives a very good synergistic effect. Monta piperita also. Monta piperita, it's very interesting, and we give infusion and spasmolytic effect, and also for biliary secretion, and used as infusion and as tincture. We could make 3 or 6 grams as infusion, and as denture 5 à 12 grams. So it is rich in caffeic acid, gallic acid, and we have also essential oils of Manta, which could be also used. We have for the first time also some honey, not monofloral 100%, but with Manta piperita, and it gives a very good effect. Carom carvi aussi, it's rich is apigénique, glutathione, thymoquinone, and we have essential oils of carom carvi. And it is good for antispasmodic and also for gastrointestinal pathologies. Citrus lemon for effective on cold, and you could mix it also with honey. Pimpina anisome, rich en luteinine, quercétine, apigénine, and we have made in also some effects with honey and propolis and essential oils from anisome. So it is interesting to make anisome with funiculum with carom carvi a synergistic effect to treat gastric pathologies. Anetum gravium also very rich in quercétine, caffeic acid, conferol as antispasm. So the city of Sefrou offers great beekeeping potential, mainly due to the diversity of honey plants rich in nectar and pollen, allowing transhumance practice. An accompanying beekeeping policy is necessary to allow optimal use of natural resources and revitalization of this sector to improve the standard of living of the local population. The plants found in this region are beneficial for bees and for treatment of childhood diseases such as diarrhea, fever, gastric colic, and cold. Some bibliography, we have some articles from us because we make also hash page that analysis of pollen. And I would like to thank the beekeepers for their interest toward this study and the sharing of their knowledge. So it is in my farm, I give oxalic and formic acid to treat beehives. We have pollen cysts. Here is my student, Meryem, Bakour, and Hassan Laaroussi. Meryem Bakour is a PhD doctor now. She make a very good doctorate with bee bread. And Hassan Laaroussi, he makes synergy with pollen, propolis, royal jelly with bee molecules. And I will speak on this, on pharmacology of bee products. And me in Agadir, because it's the old apiary in the south of Morocco. We have making a symposium in order to make a green economy for rural populations. And here it is in my farm in order to make a practice for students license in master. Here it is the traditional use of hives in south of Morocco and all. We have these beehives, how to collect, and we have now this traditional beehives, which gives a very good honey, very, very expensive honey also. And how to collect honey, we have extraction of honey, very, very interesting. And here it's my colleague Romain from Marseille. I have sent him a message in order to participate in your conference and to give photo from children. And I keep this from a child who was opening a piece of reed that is full of solitary bee pollen. You keep busy with his hive. And thank you very much for your attention.